Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 60 minutes of unscripted .NET entertainment. We're here to empower you, the .NET community, to achieve more. And I also feel like today I'm going to learn a lot more and hopefully achieve more myself. I'm one of your hosts, Katie Savage, here with David Pine and Frank Boucher. And we're super excited today to have our special guest of honor, who is also my boss, Scott Hanselman. Hey, Scott. How are you?
You were great right until the last moment there.
That's what we like to do here.
Until the end, not a closer.
That implies that I somehow elbowed my way in, and you have to do this, otherwise it goes badly on your connect.
More like the other man, Scott, please come on the show.
And here we are for our contractually obligated once a year Hanselman, where we tolerate him for the next hour.
Please be nice.
More like I'm putting in my favor of the year. Like, Scott, come on.
He spooks easily. Be nice to him.
So, Scott, I know I messaged you a couple days ago, like, what should we talk about? I decided to keep it open just because I feel like there's so many things we can talk about. So I wanted to pick your brain a bit. What are you thinking these days? What are some topics we can explore together? And for anyone listening, ask all your questions and we'll be sure to get those to Scott as well.
Well, I wanted to show you how I run Hanselman International, massive multi-country conglomerate that is my personal website.
Ooh, an inside view of HQ. Let's do it.
Hanselman HQ, which consists of me, and that's it. But I've been running it for 22 years, and I think it's got a couple of clever things that might be worth taking a look at as well. I've got some Playwright stuff, I've got some Docker stuff. So this is the main page. This is Hanselman.com. So this is just kind of like the brochure, and I encourage everyone to make a web page. Like, honestly, I told you this, Katie, when we met like years ago. Make a web page, make your own site. You learn about domain registration. You learn about SSL certificates. You learn about the cloud. So like keeping this up is a task. Then within it, I've got the podcast, which is called Hansel Minutes. And this podcast has been around for 20 plus years. That's a separate domain. So that's a second Azure app service. Okay. Then I've got /blog, which I do admit I have been less active on. I used to blog every other, 2 days a week, but now it's kind of when the spirit moves me.
You've been busy.
This is a third separate app service. But what's interesting about this one is that it runs at that /blog, separate application. So we've got 3 applications here. Then we've got other ones like Azure Friday. So that's a site of its own. And then I've got a bunch of like toy sites. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then let's be sure to watch the comments. We may need to block some folks. So then this is all being run in Azure. So this is my personal Azure. So you can see Azure Friday, the blog, the podcast, and then the main website. And then I run it all through that AFD. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that AFD is an Azure front door. Okay. And this Azure front door manages the domain, the SSL certs, all that stuff. And I try to do this as cheaply as possible. Like, I don't have unlimited credits. I always talk about this when I give presentations. I say, don't trust the Microsoft engineer who has unlimited credits. Okay, because if they do,
that seems like a lot of resources, though. So like,
it does seem like a lot of resources. So it seems like a lot. But remember that just because you have a couple of resources, or a lot in this case, in Azure, doesn't mean that it can't be done cheaply, because these are logical resources. So if we click on, for example, the podcast, and I show you the app service plan right here.
So they are all on the same service plan.
They're on the same service plan. Exactly. So I'm going to click on that one. And I will show you when we go down to scale what that pricing plan is. Because it used to be on a B1, a basic one, right? But a basic one doesn't have enough memory. So basic one is not something you'd want to be doing in production. That's meant for dev test. So I sat on a standard S1 for many, many, many years. Okay, many years. This one had about 2 gigs of RAM. RAM is the most important thing, in my opinion, in the cloud. People say it's perf. People say it's disk. It's RAM. If you can get a lot of RAM, you can abuse these machines. So check this out. Here's the little secret about Azure. An S1 costs about $60 a month. That is not a good deal. That is not a good deal. It's not a good perf. It doesn't have enough memory and it doesn't have enough performance. The sweet deal, the sweetheart deal is the premium. And I don't know why they do this because I think it's dumb, the way they phrased it. The P0 V3 has double the perf of the S1, double the perf, 4 gigs of RAM.
So much more than like.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's $41.
How does that work?
So what's
So
the catch?
What happened? The catch is this. What happened was the
There's no
S1
catch.
came out. The S1 came out for $58. The version 3 of the premium came out. The P1 V3 came out at $82. And then they figured out later and later launched, but they'd already had a P1. So they launched a P0 and they went backwards. And they said, we could do a P1, but rather than 2 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM, let's just do a smaller one for half the price. And when they did that, it turned out that it was double the quality of the S1 and cheaper. And it's got a ton of RAM. So the P0 V3 for the hobbyist, that's the sweet spot. So if you are on the call, if you, David, Katie, or Frank, have an S1, just switch it over to P. Everything gets faster. Everything gets better.
See, you called it, Katie. Learn. First thing
We're gonna learn.
to do.
Oh, is that
I knew I was
good?
gonna
Is that
learn
good?
Change my.
So I'm curious though, is this like the evolution of data centers? Like the hardware is just getting better, so then they come out with
hardware
a new
gets
offering?
better. So the premium, the difference between the premium and the standards here is that the premium here is running on an SSD. It's got better processors. It's a V3, a version 3. It's the evolution of Azure. It's a version 3 of Azure. And for production workloads, it's fantastic. So now if we switch backwards, we'll go back over to here and let's see what's going on. 5 slots. So you had said, David, there's a lot going on there.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 5 websites in one $40 app service plan. Craig in the chat says crazy differences on the pricing. Absolutely. The deal is, and this is the thing, people look at Azure, people look at AWS, and they go, oh, this is so expensive. It depends on what you're looking at. Like if you're running a business, that is probably a good value. But if you're a hobbyist running a blog, that's insane. But these little dev test machines are great, but you can go and get a better machine for less money with the P0 V3.
That's crazy. Is this going to happen again, you think? Is it?
I can't speak to that. I don't know. I just know that if you just accept the defaults, you will waste money. Sorry, what were you going to say, Katie?
Sorry, I was just going to say, like, how are you staying on top of this? Are you constantly just checking in here to see, hey, is there a better deal? Or what's your tips for making sure you're staying on it, getting the best deal? And
I wouldn't say constantly. I would say even if you did this twice a year. Like literally, if we just look at this, I was on a legacy. Here's the premium P1 V2s, right? So if we look at a P1 V2, that one right there, 3.5 gigs of RAM. This is a relative number, this 210. You can switch to a P0 V3, get slightly more RAM, basically the same CPU, and save $30 a year. And then we all know because of app service that it's trivial to just hit scale up and hit apply. zero or minimal downtime. It's fantastic. So yes, if anyone here is on any of these legacy ones, I can tell you with confidence that the production ones are better. But I just wanted to call out the little secret trick here, which is that, and this is US dollars, $41 to run my entire podcast, my entire blog, my homepage, and Azure Friday. So let's go and see if maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're working too hard. Let's go and look at the resource group, app service plan. Let's go look at, I want to see there we go, the graphs. So here's the CPU percentage, right?
Oh.
I've got a very typical sawtooth pattern. My CPU is really just under 35%. Memory, barely 50%. Memory is valuable. Plenty of room. Memory is valuable. Additionally, you want to abuse the memory on your Azure machines because that's the cheapest thing and it's the most plentiful thing. So I'm always surprised when people go and hit the database every time. It's a blog, it's a podcast, whatever it is, you don't need real time. Even when I was working on retail websites like pre-Amazon, I worked at a place called 800.com, 800.com. It became overstock.com and it got bought. They wanted real-time inventory. So we would sell stuff and they're like, we need to go and go ahead and hit the website and then see if we can get the CPU to go up. They wanted real time. And then, so what's real time? Well, at the moment in 1996 or whenever we were doing this, they were like, yeah, go directly to the database every single time. But even if you cache it for 60 seconds, the difference between real time and cached every 60 seconds is huge. It's massive. You could have a single database hit in 60 seconds, or you can have 3,000 because 3,000 people hit it for a minute. Real time is a lie unless you're doing real time work. You know what I'm saying?
This is making me like try to understand your architecture for the different sites. So I know you've got the blog, you've got the podcast. So the podcast is obviously just is that like an MP3 you're serving?
Let's do it. Let's look at it, the podcast. So this is the actual code for the podcast. So the podcast is a Razor website.
Oh, okay.
It's a Razor website. I've got a main layout. I've got my main index page. I've got archives, and archives is a series of routes. So if we look at the startup page, archives is actually, because I never really decided well what I wanted my list of shows to be. Should it be /episodes? Should it be /shows? One time I misspelled and I said /show. So now archives handles them all. Okay. So if we look at archives, which is the do it all page, look at that. Very straightforward. Like those little magic tags are the difference between a site scaling and a site not scaling. Even if it's just a minute or two, you don't need real time.
And it's interesting too, because like you said it best, like that is so easy to read. Like cache expires after 4 hours.
Oh, come on. Yeah.
I mean, even like the new modern stuff, like you look at it nowadays and it's like so much more complex than that.
Oh yeah. The other thing that I did that I feel pretty good about is here's just this is the thing, right? If you can read your code, you know it's pretty simple. Now I acknowledge that the podcast site is not rocket surgery. It's pretty basic website, but it's got some sophistication. For example, if we go and hit the podcast, and oh, by the way, this gentleman right here, I just had him on the show, Tyler Bushnell, just for a little bit of like extra color. His dad is Nolan Bushnell, if you're familiar with that name. The inventor of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So Tyler lives here in Portland, and he's my new bestie, and he made this arcade that's hanging on my wall.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So he is the founder of Polycade. So I bought this
cool.
on a Kickstarter. So this arcade on my wall here, people who may have seen me on .NET Live or ASP.NET Community Stand-Up may have known that I've had an arcade behind me for years. But this one here, I think, is even cooler. So I went and I swapped out. There he is right there. This is him with, is that him with Ludacris? So great product, super nice guy. Just happened to be on the show last week. Okay. So if we click on episodes, there's 1,013 episodes. And I had two issues with this page. One, the page is massive. If we look at the
scrolling,
the scroll there, we got 1,000 pages, 1,000 things here. So we had two issues. One, this page is unruly, and people were unhappy with the performance because we have to load 1,000 images. And then the second issue was that the images were spread out. We're in Chicago, where I was, or West US 2. Maybe that's in Washington. So the pictures were in Chicago. So I had two ways that I could potentially make this page faster. Do you guys want to guess the two things we could do to make a giant page with 1,000 pictures faster?
I already know that you use lazy loading.
Okay, so that's good. So the first one is lazy loading. So the image on the page is actually a gray GIF. And the gray GIF is actually a 1-pixel GIF. This is another little trick that we did back in the 90s. It doesn't matter what the size of the GIF is. I don't need to make a 212 by 212 gray GIF. Just make a 1 pixel by 1 pixel gray GIF. And then I just say that it's big. So then we only load the image as it enters the viewport. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to hit F12. And then over in the upper corner here, I'm going to right click and say empty cache and hard refresh. It's one of my favorite tips. If you're in Chrome or Edge, you hit F12. You can right click.
Today I learned.
Isn't that great, David?
The tools need to be present to have those options.
Yeah, you have to have the dev stuff open.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, interesting.
So that's the trick. So if we go and turn that off, nothing happens.
Yeah.
If I turn it on, right click, and this means refresh, which is the regular refresh. This means refresh, but this time I mean it. And this one means, no, I'm serious, freaking refresh. Okay. All right. So we'll hit that and we will refresh.
But your lazy load is even better than my regular.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to scroll down fast. Look, it's gray. See?
And then they come in, yeah.
They come in. So that's just JavaScript. Because what I'm loading is 1,000 1-pixel GIFs, which is all the same GIF.
Which is cached, essentially. That GIF.
And then we load in with JavaScript. We basically
only when they are visible. That's cool.
When they enter the viewport, we look at data-source, and then we turn that into source.
Yep.
That's even smarter than just like lazy loading, because by default lazy loading is just like, queue them and like,
Yeah.
So that's just like, hey, if I'm never looking down below, just don't load them. That's cool.
Yeah. Isn't that cool? Second one is the most important thing that I think people forget about when they're architecting large systems is DNS is your friend. DNS is your friend. You have more control than you realize because you control the front door, which is this thing here. So I realized when we have a picture, like here's Bria. Bria has the #1 app on the App Store right now, by the way. So Bria wrote Focus Friend by Hank Green. So Hank Green and this is a Focus Friend.
Oh, yeah.
Focus
I tried that app.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
I listened to that episode and I download the app right after.
Yep. So Focus Friend is this little bean here, makes socks. And Hank Green is a famous YouTuber and science educator. And it's pretty cool. So Bria is an experienced developer, and she has a number of popular apps in the App Store. And then for a couple of days last week, Focus Friend was the #1 app on both the Android and a iPhone App Store over ChatGPT.
Wow.
Incredible, huh?
Isn't that great? So we have a picture of Bria here, note where she lives. She doesn't live at www.hanselman.com.
image, yeah.
She lives at images.hanselman.com because that is actually a CDN. And Azure Front Door can give you these CDNs for cheap. Azure Front Door used to be expensive, but now Azure Front Door is actually very affordable. The early versions I found to be too expensive and I didn't use them. But Azure Front Door for the last 2 or 3 years has been great because take a look at this. I've got all these domains set up and I'm getting the cert automatically managed.
Oh, that is so nice.
It's great. I don't have to worry about these getting expiring. So if we look at Hanselman, it's images.hanselman.com. It is an AFD managed content distribution network. And if we click on that.
And while that's loading, Scott, for our viewers that are unfamiliar with the acronym AFD,
yeah, Azure Front Door. So Azure Front Door is basically the front door. And what's cool about it is that it is the thing that you terminate at. So if we look at my, let's do this. Here's my, actually that's too bright. Let's do black. I guess white is, it's going to be white. Okay. So here's you, right? Here's the browser. Or Bowser. And here's your web server. So typically you type in www.hanselman.com and you hit like that, right? However, this could be a virtual machine. It could be a physical computer. It could be a Raspberry Pi. It's got some IP address. Do you want people on the internet directly knocking on your front door? What you really want is a doorman. You want a big guy at the front door who could take your packages, turn away weirdos, tell people that you're not there. So what you do is you have your app service exist over here. So my app service is hanselmancore.azurewebsites.net. Okay. And in the old days, I would have hanselman.com end there. But we're not going to do that. Instead, hanselman.com is going to terminate at this Azure Front Door. And then Azure Front Door can say, oh, /blog, you're going to go over here. Oh, www is going to go over here. Oh, images is going to go over here. So it's a doorman. And it sits in front of app service. So hanselman.com hits the main site. Images.hanselman or images.hanselman.com actually go to Azure Storage. So in here is Azure Storage Explorer, and it's literally just shownumber.jpg. Isn't that cool? So
wow.
You wanted to see who was on the next episode. You could just put in that episode number and see if it comes back. Now, I haven't got an episode yet for 1015, but we could go back in time, see who was the episode of the Beast. So the episode of the Beast, episode 666, this gentleman wrote Doom, the Black Book, which is a really great book that talks about how John Carmack and friends wrote Doom, the video game. So I made him episode 666. So Bria was episode 1011. Now, if we go back over here, we can type in, and can you still see that? Didn't go black?
Yeah, yep.
I can type in 1011 as the show number. So you can go to any Hanselman episode /show number and notice what it just did. It canonicalized the URL.
Ah, okay. Yeah, we've got a Twitch user here asking, so Azure Front Door works as a reverse proxy?
Exactly. Awesome. So here, all of this text doesn't matter.
Oh wow!
Right?
Okay.
I can still get to that episode by putting whatever I want here, because that's what matters. You've seen that as well with Stack Overflow. They kind of pioneered that style. So The show number is the unique, for lack of a better word, GUID, globally unique identifier. It's just the show number. So I should be able to go /1, and there's episode 1 in 2006, where we talked about the new Xbox 360.
Wow, that's
that's back when I had hair. Good times. Isn't that cool?
That's super cool. Someone's also asking about the podcast and kind of if that works in a similar way.
So I believe in making things as simple as possible. So I thought there was 2 ways to handle the podcast, meaning the MP3 itself.
Mm-hmm.
One would be to handle it via Azure storage and have that just be a CDN kind of a thing. But you've got to admit that delivering large media content is a solved problem. It doesn't make any sense for me to host that. So I actually host that with a thing called Simplecast. So this right here is a JavaScript component, and the podcast is being hosted by a company called Simplecast. And you can see that by clicking on you can see that by clicking on /subscribe. So if we zoom in down here, hanselminutes.com/subscribe. So if I click on that, you're ending up at feeds.simplecast.com/some weird number. So then this is the RSS feed.
That's your feed for your podcast. Okay, cool.
So then we can go and look at one of the MP3s, and we can actually see 2 interesting things. We see 2 domains within a single URL. Does anyone know what's going on there?
Looks like they have AI sitting on top of it now, perhaps.
So that's just the URL. So I use Zencastr, which I recommend highly. Zencastr is my recording. It's kind of like Riverside or StreamYard. And that /r is a redirector. So everyone who clicks on that or downloads that MP3 has to bounce through r.zen.ai. That's where I get my analytics. I could remove that and then just hit cdn.simplecast to get the MP3. This is very common. There's another company called Podscribe. There's Pod Analytics. There's all kinds of podcasting analytics. And the idea is you just take whatever URL you had and you put a thing in front of it. So we can go back and look at the code.
Oh, cool. So all your stats are aggregated because of that first domain.
Exactement.
That's great, because that's one of the, you want to publish where people are catching their stuff, but doing so now you can count them all.
Is there a risk of missing anything, of like some malicious end user like goes and takes all your RSS feed and just removes that URL and then goes direct to Simplecast?
The only thing that they do is remove my the only thing that would do would remove my analytics. So if that is some flavor of malice, then they can go with God. You know what I mean? Like what? I don't know what to tell you. That's a pretty weird thing to do.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can find that where I end up pulling that back. So there's the image. Images plus show number plus JPEG. Again, not complicated. There's my URL creator. And then I've got a Razor subpage, which would be It's been a while since I've been in here. I've been doing mostly, actually, I want to show you the tests actually. But anyway, the point is generating these URLs, I let them handle that, and then they're my CDN. So that is my backend database. Oh, and then I call their API. So Simplecast has an API. So I use this. This is my V2 of my database. So when a result comes back from the Simplecast API, that's how I populate the page. I use this here. Now, you see this J?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Type alias. Love it.
Love this.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just like
Isn't
okay.
that cool?
Yeah,
It's very cool.
indeed.
So what I end up doing is I've got this async get shows that returns a list of shows, specifically a task of list of shows. What do you think about? I've seen someone, Janiscu, in the chat there. What do you think about the aliasing? I like it. I think it's delightful. So here, this is actually, I'm pretty proud of this chunk of code here, and I think it's worth calling out because it's an interesting piece of .netism. Take a look at what's going on here. I want a function that gets shows, but I also want to cache those shows. So we have a func called populate shows cache. And that is returning a func that has a task of list of shows. So this is not calling a function. Line 39 does not call a function. It just puts a function over there and says, if you need anything, I can populate the shows cache. And when I do it, so this is a declaration of a function, and it's just putting a function in a variable. So then I've got this function called get or add async. And it says, go look in the cache for a key called shows. And if it's there, return it. Otherwise, I've got this func that you can go.
Factory, yeah.
I got this factory. And then do that every 8 hours. You see how I like that? I'm all about real time, baby. 4 to 8 hours. Could go either way. Now, get or add async is inside of Lazy Cache, which is one of my favorite .NET libraries. And Lazy Cache is just a little .NET NuGet you can get, and you pass in your cache, a key, and the thing that populates it.
We had a question about your function, Scott. Freddie, want to know, why don't you assign the function directly?
Why don't I assign the function directly? I don't understand the question. Like, why don't I just call the function directly? Yeah, give me more details, Freddie. I don't understand. Because right now, what I'm doing is I'm putting this variable is just sitting around pointing at this function, and this function populate shows cache. This is the thing that does the actual work. It calls the API.
I think I know what they're asking.
What's that?
So I think they're saying, why not just use populate shows cache in place of show object factory without actually calling it?
Oh, because because I like to teach. Yes, the reason is I like to teach, and I like to show people that it's a function that returns a task of list of shows, and this is a func of task of list of shows. If I buried all of that in a var, I wouldn't be able to teach you this right now, because you'd have to I'd have to hover over it with a tooltip, or I'd have to just tell you, trust me, bro. Because this is not just my podcast, it's also a teaching opportunity.
Right.
So I personally understand that there's an attractiveness to hiding everything in var, and I understand that there's an attractiveness in, like, I can make those 3 lines 2 lines, right? I can make that 1 line of link, but this is easy to read.
And that's a really good point, because like I remember years ago learning that lesson, like, while I can optimize the snot out of my code, other humans have to read it.
Right. And that's a great point. So thank you, Freddie, for bringing that up. But this is 3 lines. And honestly, it's 2 lines because one of them is a is a return. Yes, I could make this whole thing 1 line. I could avoid the thing, but I would argue that this is easy to read. You know what I mean? Plus, I can go like this. See the double equals?
Oh, yeah.
Why are you assigning twice?
So many fun facts in this code.
So I really like teachable, readable code, right? So let's see what this thing
Shows
says.
equal shows.
Oh, is one of them in this? Is one a class scoped variable?
I had a reason for this, and I think this is wrong.
I think
He's
it's
trying to
wrong,
teach
too.
us something, and he's just a typo. Sorry. I shouldn't have said it. Maybe.
I'm going to say I think you're wrong. I had a reason for this.
I'm sure of it.
I just can't remember why. It was
The one in the middle, is that a class scope variable?
Could be like that. It was just like it's not useful right now at this point, but maybe that's what David's saying. That
It may
one
have
is local and the other one is
It may have
global.
been that I had two variables, and I was going to do an 8. That was going to do this. Placeholder for a second variable. Yeah, that's probably what it was. I think I did another variable. Yeah, I appreciate BDCP says we should add just another one, just for clarity. Well, to have more
For readability.
Yeah, for readability. Well, but see, this is a great point. So let's say that this is a mistake. I could remove it, but how would I know if everything's okay? I'm gonna need tests.
That's a segue. That's a perfect.
Huh?
You just.
Yeah.
Beautiful segue.
That's
It's
nice,
unscripted,
yeah?
but the guy know how to present. Definitely.
Okay, so I've removed that. I want to call out over here that I've got tests, but I've also got playwright tests. Okay, so these tests are functional tests. These tests are basically a bunch of, oh yeah, I forgot about this. This is a whole thing. Oh, so good. Okay, so these are just like go and get the database type stuff, like test the database, assert that you've got this number of shows, check the sponsors. Like it's just a bunch of like validation. These ones are less interesting to me because I think I can right click on these and say run tests and they'll all run just fine. There you go. So they're running.
I just keep selfishly thinking about opportunities for Aspire to find its way into your code base eventually.
So that's funny that you mentioned that because I really feel like for .NET 10, Aspire is going to be like the #1 way to modernize an app. And even though this app already exists in a container, it already exists in the cloud, you might not see a reason to Aspire-ify it. Even just for the open telemetry would be a reason to move to Aspire.
Yeah, like the local dashboard. Absolutely. Yeah.
100% agreed. And then running the tests, I could run the tests inside here as well. So obviously that works. So ship it, right? But I've also got playwright tests. And the playwright tests, I think, are really interesting because it's not really clear to a lot of folks how to do playwright testing in C#. Typically, playwright testing is something that's done in TypeScript.
But Scott, what is playwright? What is that?
Yeah, I was about to ask.
To do that? Okay.
Well, like, in a few words, just in case.
So playwright.dev. Playwright is like Selenium. It is effectively putting your browser on a puppet string and allowing it to click on buttons for you. Because when I do my testing, I can imagine like we would call it Russian nesting dolls. I don't know what the politically correct way to say that now is, but a unit test tests a little bit of code. And those little unit tests, they don't actually hit the live database. They're actually hitting a JSON file, which is a copy of the database. So that would be a unit test. Then an integration test would be testing the integration with the actual backend database. And then an end-to-end smoke test would be actually clicking the button that actually hits the backend code, that actually hits the database, that actually goes to the backend. So you want to basically start small and go outwards. So you want to have multiple layers of nested tests. So Playwright allows you to do that. Now, back in the day, if we go to Hanselman and search for Selenium, I used to do my testing like this. So here's 2014. 11 years ago, I would use things like Browser Stack, which is a delightful product. And I even wrote a thing once that was called Water in 2006. Gosh, I'm old.
I used that.
Water was web
used
application testing in Ruby.
Oh, wow.
WAPIR. So we would launch Internet Explorer, visit the site, set the 2 text boxes, and then click a button. Isn't that hot?
That
20
is
years ago,
very.
kids. Look at that. Look how sexy that is.
And what's wild is like it's the same premise now with Playwright, right? You walk up to the website, you open the page, you find something in the
DOM. Not to
DOM.
take anything away from Playwright or any of the other products, but it speaks to the larger idea that like it cannot be overstated that when someone like me is like shaking my tiny fist at the cloud, like, oh, old man shakes fist at cloud. Like literally 20 years ago, we were having automated browser tests with quite a bit of success. However, it was not very robust, and it was not very easy, and it was not very reliable, and it only worked in Internet Explorer.
Yeah.
What's great about Playwright is it works on any browser, works everywhere, and it's only one API. So that's really cool. So what that means is I write the test once, and then I do it n times. However, I want to be able to have a test like here. Here's a test. And these are great. It reads like English. Go to this page, right? Does the H1 have this text in it? I expect that to be visible. I mean, that's gold. And then I just want more of those. Just do that n times, right? Have you written a lot of Playwright tests, Katie?
No, not yet. But I talk with Debbie about it sometimes, and she's really selling me.
Yeah,
I wrote quite a few.
It's it adds a lot of confidence. It makes you feel better about your browser and your app. So you just write a ton of these. Now the thing is, though, where do you think, my friends, does the application get started? What port is it on? Who spun it up? I just have a test sitting right there. Where's the setup? Where's the prep? Anyone, any thoughts? Because I want to be able to right click and run that test and have it work. Well, this is a little bit of stuff that is kind of a challenge with ASP.NET, and we're looking to make this better. I've been talking to them about this for .NET 10. We'll see. We have a one-time setup where we actually make this thing called a web application test builder factory, and I find a port, fire up Kestrel, and manually call app.start. And then I feel very bad about this one line here where I say, you're kidding me, where I have to go and like find a particular IP address. If you hide that little chunk of code there, everything below that is delightful. So web application test builder factory goes and looks at this MVC testing thing and figures out how to start the app up. So I actually start the application inside of the unit test. No one hits F5, it just starts. What's cool about that is that I can go out to the command line here, and I can go to here. I've got all these PS1 files. And I really like PowerShell as a scripting language that's cross-platform. This is a thing I believe. Some people will say, well, just do it in Bash. Well, that's fine, but I want it to run on anywhere. I want it to run in Linux and Windows.
Wow.
So if we look at like...
with .NET 10, you'll be able to do it in C#.
Yep, can do that as well. But PowerShell exists and exists well right now.
Yeah.
So on Windows, we have an extension .ps1. On Linux doesn't care about extensions. So it'll use a shebang instead. And the shebang says, use the PowerShell that's in the environment. But that's ignored as a comment on Windows. So this script will run in both Windows and Linux. And it installs Playwright and then goes and installs Playwright and then runs .NET Test. But then I can do these headless, or I can do what I call headed. So a headless test just runs test.ps1, and a headed test, meaning headless means I don't want to see the browser. It's just going to happen in the background. Headed means I actually want to see the browser, I made that name up. And I want to have it go clicky. Okay. So this might work, might not. Sometimes I've got 3 other monitors. So I'm going to have to grab the browser when it appears and then shove it over to the other screen here. There's some code coverage that just went by. That's done with coverlet. Oh, there you go. That browser I did not launch. See these browsers coming up?
Yep.
These are all having I'm trying to drag them over from the other screen. They keep popping up on the middle screen. So there you go. That just ran 14 tests.
And each test
ran them.
pops up a new one?
So every single test is its own browser.
Ah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So now, here's the part that I'm particularly proud of. What if I want to run that entire thing and I want to run it in Ubuntu? So now I'm on WSL. We'll go into Hanselman's core. Oh, now this is a really important thing. If there's anyone on either the call or in the chat that uses WSL, it cannot be overstated that you should not be using your C drive or your D drive within WSL. Do the work on the disk drive inside of WSL. So how do I transfer data between them? I use Git. So you check in on one and you pull out on the other. That way you're going to be running at full speed. So now I've got Docker installed. Okay, here's the podcast. And I've got a wonderful, I'm going to hit code dot. I could use VS proper, but I want to make sure I'm non-denominational. So this one I need to update. This is using .NET 8. And it's what's called a multi-stage Docker file. Here we do the build, we restore it, we copy just the results into a folder called /app. So imagine a container, which is effectively a tiny virtual machine, with nothing on it except one folder called app. And app has my podcast inside. Then, this is a hack. I dig deep into /app and I pull out in the .NET 8 folder the Playwright script, and I install Playwright inside the container. This takes a little time. Then I use the chiseled or the smallest available version of that Docker container, and that's my runtime. And then the testing will happen inside of that that thing. So we can go Docker test.
Is Chisel did they change the name after, or still Chisel is still the lightest version, like the more, not clean, but the tiniest image?
I'm pretty sure it is. I think it's a cool name.
Oh, I like the name. I had the feeling they after that, they published another one, like
yeah, I thought it was Jammy for 9. I could be wrong though. But
no, hang on. So Jammy is the version. Chiseled is the style. So if you have a, you're Michelangelo and you have a nice big rock, you're going to chisel out exactly what you want, no more. Jammy is the name of the version of Ubuntu. Chiseled means I have chopped off all the pieces that I don't want to ship for security and performance reasons. Questions in the chat from Shiv. Is the headed test better? I just think the headed test looks cooler. So the idea is if you want to see the browsers pop up so you can debug the problem, you do it with the browser popping up. Once you get confident in your tests, you don't have to see them anymore. So that's why I do that.
If you run on like in a CI/CD pipeline or something, you don't want you want headless, right? You're not watching.
That's a great point. So if I go to my CI/CD pipeline, segue, and I have other questions that I see there in the chat that I'll get to as well. So I use both GitHub Actions and Azure DevOps. So here's the Hanselman, its website inside of Azure DevOps, which is running headless. So if we go and look at the pipelines, we can see the calls, right? And I can go inside the job. I can see Playwright getting installed. See? And then I can see the tests. So here are all the tests running inside of Azure DevOps. So Playwright is running there.
Without any audience, so it's headless.
No one's looking at it. So a couple questions in the chat. Evalda says, can you do it with Hyper-V or GUI, not with shell commands you barely remember? So I would respectfully offer that if we go back here, this is my opinion. Again, everyone's different, and that's the great thing about computers, right? Everybody can do whatever makes you happy. Does not bother me at all. I have in my lovely, colorful directories here all my shell commands. Headed tests, headless tests, record test, restart, run test, watch tests, build on Docker, run on Docker, test on Docker. If that is difficult to remember, that's cool. I can go into Visual Studio proper, and I can literally say right-click, run tests. And that's why it was so important to me to run these as tests. That's why things like MS Test are so important, because once you express it as a test, then it shows up in the Test Explorer. So those Playwright tests, look at that. Does search work?
Right.
Does main navigation bar work? Blah, 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 blah. This all works.
And one thing I like to do with my Playwright tests is I have a flag that says when the debugger is attached, it will conditionally specify that they're not headless, so that I can debug them and like see the browser and like go evaluate things. And
yeah. Now, Stuart Lang in the chat calls out that there's a couple of things that he does. One is that he, you having trouble there?
Someone keeps clicking it.
In the kitchen.
Stop clicking it. I got it.
We'll have one directory now. So you can run traces. So it'll actually take screenshots and snapshots and effectively put a timeline together. It's effectively TiVo for testing. The other thing that you can do, which is a little trick, is you see how I have --logger TRX. That will generate a test result running file that I can then open up into Visual Studio. Core Count says XUnit was recently added as a supported framework, but the recorder didn't support it. I am not familiar. I write my tests myself. I don't use them with recording, but yeah, XUnit, MS Test, they all work. So that's good. And then, let's go back to Explorist. Explorist said, why not use the C drive and the D drive? Is it a perf or security advisory? It is 100% perf. So let's talk about that for a second. So this is Windows. I am on the D drive. Now I'm using what's called a dev drive, and I've made a little icon here indicating I am on my dev drive. That little rocket ship is how I know I'm on my dev drive. If I switch to C GitHub versus D GitHub, that's the C drive, that's the D drive. I know it is because it has a rocket ship. That uses REFS, the reliable file system. So if I go here on Windows into disk management.
And I'm assuming you have a blog post about this.
No, I haven't written a blog about this yet. This is just common sense, David Pine. What's wrong with
you? All right. Yeah,
so here I've got the dev drive is REFS, and this is a feature that you have. You've got this already. You can just go type in dev drive and go look at your settings and developer settings, dev drive. So I've got 50 gigs with optimized performance for developer scenarios. Okay, that works on Windows. Now, the question that Explorist had was, what about in WSL? Now, if I say pwd in WSL, print working directory, we're in the home Scott folder. That's the home Scott folder of Linux. We're not using NTFS. We're not using REFS. We are inside of an ext4, which is another file system. And if you type in df, you can see all of your file systems on Ubuntu. So the file system that I'm focused on is that one. Now, in a folder called mount, if we go ls mount, I want to say ls, and I remember all these things because reasons. I don't know why. That's my C drive, D drive, E drive, F drive, all mounted as folders. So that means that I could go cd mount, I'm going to zoom in on that, C users, Scott, desktop, right? So now I'm on my Windows C drive, my NTFS partition. But I'm doing that via a mount point. It's effectively like a network share to myself. This is an oversimplification, but I'm effectively using a network share to myself. So that means I'm going to pay for 1,000 tiny paper cuts every time I hit something on this drive. It's fine for this, but it's not really appropriate if I'm going to be doing real perf. So I'm going to stay over here and do that work. So this folder, I think it's GitHub. No, I didn't do GitHub here. So yeah, here we go. These are all this is all my coding projects. So Hansel minutes exists again here. So this is on Ubuntu, home Scott Hansel minutes, while this is D drive. And what's cool about this is that I like to go and open up two. So I'm going to hold down Alt with my thumb. And I'm going to click on PowerShell, which is going to cause PowerShell to open in another side window. So now I've got Windows on the right and Ubuntu on the left. And then I'm going to .NET build in both places. Ooh, this is good. Oh, look, we've got a thing that's not building. So now I got to go and figure something out over in Ubuntu world. So then I can go and make sure that it works in multiple places. So I can build on Docker, I can build on Windows, I can build on Ubuntu, all on the same machine. There was a comment. Dev drive is awesome as you don't get issues with antiviruses, right? That is a good point. So one of the things you can do with dev drive, so if we go over here and we put in developer drive, you go to developer settings, you go down to dev drive, and you want to ensure, this is the dev drive here. You can make all of these in settings. Inside of Windows security, which is Defender, you can go and say, scan for threats asynchronously on dev drive to reduce performance. That means it's not scanning the thing you just compiled for viruses because you just compiled it.
Is it on by default?
It is on by default, but not. But if you work at a company that controls all of your settings,
oh, they may be okay. Oh, we'll have to.
They might be harsh in your mellow. So let's go back to a 4-shot because we're running out of time, and I'm running out of time. Whoever the director is, there we go.
Pressing buttons.
I think it's funny that you all fight over who's
I mean, normally we're
eager.
right. Normally we're like a lot better. I don't know if we're nervous because you're here and we're like, oh God, make sure we're doing it. Oh,
it's just instinct. I feel like I see the comment, I'm like, click.
Cool. Yeah, I think is that it? We're gonna wrap it up.
I mean, I could go another hour, but I think we should.
Right.
All right. Sorry. I was ready for the next tip. I feel like I was like, all right, next
It's
tip.
ready for part 2.
All right. Well, thank you.
Was any of that
Scott.
helpful? I'm not sure if that was helpful or not.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of
I
course
love
that
it.
was helpful. I think what I'll need to do is go back and add some chapters so that folks can skip around and see what's going on. But Scott, thank you so much for sharing all of those tips with us, showing us around your code bases. We really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody watching. I hope you learned something today, and I hope you'll tune in with us next week. Before I close us out, Scott, is there anything that you're excited about that you'd want the people to check out right now?
Things that I'm excited about. It is Monday, and I am going to Jimmy John's.
That's pretty
to have
exciting.
A roast beef sandwich, and I have only 2 more hours for lunch. So that's what I'm excited about. What are you
I can't
excited
believe
about?
you're a Jimmy John's guy. That's crazy.
What do you go to Jersey Mike's like a savage?
I'm a Jersey Mike's. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love
Yeah.
Jersey Mike's. Jersey.
Jersey
Locked
Mike's
and
all the
reported.
way.
Locked and
Locked and
reported.
reported. Well, I think that's a good place to sign us off. So thanks,
Awesome.
everybody. We'll catch you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.